will make a statement to the European Parliament on the preparations for next week's G20 summit. As chairman of the G20, Gordon Brown has been offering active international leadership at what is proving to be one of the most difficult times in recent history. The speed with which he has helped develop the G20 as a new tool of international economic governance is both encouraging and impressive.
Today, there is no old Europe, no new Europe, no East or West Europe. There is only one Europe, and it is our home Europe. So I stand here, proud to be British and proud to be European, representing a country that does not see itself as an island adrift from Europe, but as a country at the centre of Europe, not in Europe's slipstream, but in Europe's mainstream. And that is why I am also proud that by a large majority, our British Parliament ratified the Lisbon Treaty. And I believe that we in Europe are uniquely placed to lead the world in meeting the wholly new and momentous challenges of globalisation ahead.
Prime Minister, you received some criticism this afternoon for your comment, British jobs for British workers, but you can brush that aside, because from the moment you said it, I don't think anybody seriously thought that you would ever, as a British Prime Minister, put the interests of British workers above that of your European dream. And my goodness me, you showed that this afternoon. It's just a pity that apart from UKIP, virtually nobody seems to have bothered to turn up to listen to you. No, you're very popular here. You're very popular indeed, because within a few days of the Irish saying no to the Lisbon Treaty, you had rammed that treaty through the British Parliament, and you've done it breaking a specific... You see, I said you were popular. You did it breaking a specific manifesto pledge that you would give the British people a referendum on the constitutional treaty. Shame on you, Prime Minister, for doing that. You have devalued democracy in our country. You have devalued the trust that voters have got in you as a British Prime Minister. But of course we know the reason why. The reason why is that we would have voted no. You said in your speech that none but those on the extremes oppose European Union. Well, that may be right amongst professional career politicians, but a clear majority of the British people want us to have friendship and free trade with the European Union, but do not want to be members of this political union.
I want to discuss how we can build from a world which looks today unsustainable, unsafe and unequal, a truly global society which is sustainable for all, secure for all and fair to all. And let me repeat, I believe that the European Union is uniquely placed to lead in building this future.
Will you now work to bring the United Kingdom into the euro in the post-recession period?
I am also confident that perhaps after today you will announce the end of a couple of opt-outs, or even, as my friend Graham Watson said, announce the entry of the UK in the euro.
Some of you will know that for many years I have advanced the case for a global Europe and for the economic reforms to make it happen.
The initiative for a global response to a global crisis came from Europe. I will recall that both President Sarkozy and I went to Camp David to propose to President Bush a global response.
But I have made this case so strongly in recent years precisely because I passionately want Europe to be leading on the world stage.
Prime Minister, what a courageous speech.
I see you've already mastered the essential craft of the European politician, namely the ability to say one thing in this chamber and a very different thing to your home electorate. You've spoken here about free trade and amen to that. Who would have guessed, listening to you just now, that you were the author of the phrase British jobs for British workers, and that you have subsidised, where you have not nationalised outright, swathes of our economy, including the car industry and many of the banks?
Starting at our debate today, as we prepare for the London summit next week, I propose that we as Europe take a central role in replacing what was once called the old Washington consensus with a new and principled economic consensus for our times.
You cannot continue against public opinion to build this European Union, if you do it against the will of the people, you are storing up enormous social and political problems for the future. Please, please, let the peoples of Europe decide their destiny. Don't have it done in parliaments like this and parliaments like Westminster. It won't work.
I propose that Europe takes the lead in a bold plan to ensure that every continent now makes the changes in the banking system that will open the path to shared prosperity, that every country participates and cooperates in setting global standards for financial regulation, and every continent injects the resources we need to secure economic growth and jobs.
We need a European Financial Services Authority.
We need also to reject all forms of economic nationalism and protectionism.
And I believe that for the first time we can also agree the big changes necessary for coordinated action that will signal the beginning of the end of offshore tax havens and offshore centres.
With its unique experience of setting supranational, transnational rules, we show that the European Union is better prepared than anyone, not to impose, but to propose the rules for this globalisation.
Our regulations should apply to every bank, everywhere, at every time, with no opt-out for a shadow banking system, no hiding place in any part of the world for tax avoiders who are refusing to pay their fair share.
And as far as the economy is concerned, you've told us that somehow you're the economic guru. You're the man that can save the world. Well, I remember very well your first big act as Chancellor when you sold 400 metric tons of gold on the world's exchanges at $275 an ounce. At today's valuation, that would be $10 billion higher. But it isn't just the fact you got it wrong, because we can all get it wrong. It was the fact that you announced in advance how much you were going to sell and on what day you were going to sell it. It was an error so basic that the average A-level economics student, even in these educationally devalued times, wouldn't have done. To add to that, you've destroyed our private pension system. You took away from the Bank of England its ability to regulate the banks and gave it to the tick-box bureaucrats at the FSA in Canary Wharf. And we haven't heard an apology. Your government has apologised for the Amritsar massacre. You've apologised for slavery. You've apologised for virtually everything. Will you please apologise for what you did as British Chancellor, and then perhaps we might just listen to you. Thank you.
A new reformed International Monetary Fund in which we welcome greater representation from the emerging economies and which must have at least 500 billion of resources, twice what it has today, must be empowered to help countries that are facing a flight of capital, help them assist restructuring the capacity of the banks and enable them to restore lending to their industries. And so I want an international monetary fund that does not just react to crises, but prevents crises. And I want a World Bank that has the resources to prevent poverty and to facilitate, amidst the collapse of trade credits, the expansion of trade round the world.
Perhaps you would have more moral authority in this House if your actions matched your words. Perhaps you would have more legitimacy in the councils of the world if the United Kingdom were not going into this recession in the worst condition of any G20 country. The truth, Prime Minister, is that you have run out of our money. The country as a whole is now in negative equity. Every British child is born owing around £20,000. Servicing the interest on that debt is going to cost more than educating the child.
And today I want to emphasise also that Europe and America can work more closely together. I talked to President Obama yesterday about what I want to talk to you about today, about a new era of heightened cooperation between Europe and America. Now, never in recent years have we had an American leadership so keen to cooperate at all levels with Europe.
The European Union is moving. We'll say it loud and clear in London so that we can be working together with our partners, namely our American friends. We want the others to move along with us. We need global rules to the global economy.
So starting with the EU-US summit a few days from now, when President Obama comes to Prague, we can transform that summit from just an annual meeting into an unstoppable progressive partnership to secure the global change that the world now needs.
Prime Minister, you cannot carry on forever squeezing the productive bit of the economy in order to fund an unprecedented engorgement of the unproductive bit. You cannot spend your way out of recession or borrow your way out of debt. And when you repeat in that wooden and perfunctory way that our situation is better than others, that we're well placed to weather the storm, I have to tell you, you sound like a Brezhnev-era apparatchik giving the party line. You know, and we know, and you know that we know that it's nonsense. Everyone knows that Britain is worse off than any other country as we go into these hard times.
Tell me now so I know.
Nice speech, Mr. Brown, but what are you ready to do, really?
If you tell me now, then I know what to do.